Cause and Effect. Episode 1. Whose side is it anyway? We often say there are two sides to every story. We acknowledge that each person saw, felt, experienced it differently than another. Still, we further take it to, there are three sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth. I often preferred this concept. It gave me a little grace that I couldn't say anyone else was more right than I was in a retelling, and in turn, they could not insist on being more correct than me as they told their perspective. It allowed that the truth could affirm perhaps both of us, one of us, or neither of us, giving a level playing field. But who speaks for the truth? Eventually, I started to realize it is still a conversation between the two all over again, with now an added layer of nuance that this invisible specter, always present, always watching, known as the truth, had been there witnessing the entire occasion, but was simply unavailable to share their account. Thus, it meant the truth was silent. How can its side of the story be considered if it can't even speak? I thought about what that meant any time I shared my side of the story about anything. I was telling my view, and it is my truth, but what is the big difference between my truth and the truth? What gives it meaning and distinction? What parts of whatever happened in that moment is simply true? True because it's real and right and it led to the moment. True because it is what filled the time before the moment came. True because it remained, even when the moment is over. When is my side of the story also the truth too? The interesting thing is that the truth is just aware. It sees all of the pieces that built the puzzles we find ourselves in. Had I always been aware of those pieces too? Am I ever? Starting today in this podcast, I want to start sharing a journey of finding the truth in my truth. I want to bring you with me, and you see it for yourself and make your own ways to do the same if you ever need to do so. I want to be aware of what is absolute, regardless of what I ended up saying or doing or choosing. The irrefutable pieces of how I became who I am, the way the world has affected me and molded the pathways available to me, not the idea that I chose pathways that molded my negative experiences and put me in spaces when I had to tell my side of the story. After all, everything we do in life, everything we experience, everything we think, is a matter of cause and effect. The truth sees the story of the cause, but can't speak it. I've been stuck describing the effects for years, but couldn't see the causes add up to them. Maybe if I can channel both, learn to see the causes and describe the effects together, I'll learn whose side is the most accurate. Maybe I'll be able to speak my truth and the truth together when I need to, in a way that brings me the right of knowing it's right and the hope of it being undeniable. To be able to share what has occurred in a way that brings me agency and accountability to those who can help me find a way forward is what I'm seeking. I think I deserve that. I think you deserve it too. Let's find it, have it, shape it, know it. Then, once we can share that our truth is the truth too, maybe we can steer our paths in the directions that bring us illumination. Hope that the future will be different from the past. A new truth going forward. Now we're going to get an opportunity to have some perspective from one of the staff members here at Pathways. Today we're going to be talking to Maddie. She is absolutely fantastic. You can usually find her on the third floor. And I want to say thank you so much, Maddie, for you being a part of creating the podcast project with me and the other people.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm stoked.
I have a few questions. I would like to ask you what your thoughts are on these subjects and just kind of get to know a little bit more about how you process things when they have occurred. Who's someone in your life that always hears you out?
Our editor, Michael, is pointing to himself, I think someone that helps me in my life and always hears me out is my mom. She's someone that I can go to with any problems or worries, or when I'm happy about something. She's always there to listen, and she gives really good advice, which I think I've learned in my more adult years. I think when I was a teenager, I was like, oh, she doesn't know anything. I think that's pretty typical teenager. But she really gives good advice because she's lived some life. So she's someone that I go to for sure.
Where do you usually go to think about something when you just experienced it, when something big happened?
I think I go outside. I live near the ocean, and so that's quite a calming place for me. So I do tend to go for a walk, spend some time either, I think, in the forest or by the ocean and just look out and see the mountains. And it's a good place to process and get grounded again.
Yes, I love going outside as well, too. I go for 2 walks a day.
Nice.
Because it's just, I don't know. First of all, I love just the fresh air of being outside. But I feel like I get 2 different kinds of experiences when I go. When I go during the day, I get my, hey, how you doing time, you know, speaking to people. But when I go at night, it's precisely the opposite. It's completely silent. I love that. It gives me a moment to just, I like sometimes just minimizing the amount of noise that I'm making just to see how the world sounds. And then when I finally do rustle a little bit, it makes me feel like, oh, yeah, I'm a little part of the orchestra too.
I love that. That's so important because I think so much of our days we spend either listening to music or podcasts or people or talk, and or like TV shows or whatever it is, and our brains are always listening to something. So I think that's super important that what you just said is you take time to just remember that there is silence and it is calming, and then you're like, oh, I'm here too. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, that's important to do.
Absolutely. Now, when a moment is happening, I have a question about how you feel inside your body. Do you feel like you are inside that moment, experiencing it, essentially that it is happening directly to you? Or do you sometimes feel yourself kind of bounced away from the situation, like you're participating in it, but remotely?
I think probably the latter. I think good or bad, sometimes it's kind of like your body and your mind, they're just trying to get through the moment and react appropriately maybe. And I think I've experienced trying to just get through the moment. I think I'm maybe going towards more bad times. I don't know why my brain's going there.
Yeah, it's all right.
So yeah, get through. And then I think I just give myself space to be I can process this after.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It definitely does.
Yeah.
I am extremely similar.
Okay.
The majority of the time, it is like that for me as well.
Yeah.
And there are some positive moments where that's occurring too. But I think, in my opinion, especially as I heard you mentioning that is the way that you handle it, what immediately came to my mind is I think that's a mark of relatively strong self-restraint. When you are aware that your emotions can surge, and they will surge because you are uncomfortable. And I've never really thought about what could cause that sense of distance between you in the moment and the way you're thinking as though you're outside of your body. But I think for me, the reason I'm trying to be out of my body is because I know that all of those emotions may overwhelm my sense of reason. And what is the most important to me in that moment, for good or for bad, is I would like my peace to come back. I would like the moment to return to comfortable. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's entirely fair. When we say good or bad for it, of course, there are some moments where, how do you address it? But we have to acknowledge that as human beings, we have a right to want to remove ourselves from discomfort. And a method of partial removal of our own sense of awareness, just to participate cautiously and peacefully until the moment is over. I think that requires a lot of restraint. That's how I'm seeing it, at least.
Definitely. And I think sometimes our first initial reactions to something aren't actually how we want to respond in that moment. Like I'm just thinking, for example, like in an angry moment, maybe I'm feeling really hurt or I've got a lot of emotions going through, and my initial response might not be who I am as a person. It might just be that like quick first thought that we might regret after, maybe.
Exactly.
You know? And so I think that's also a lesson that is good to learn in life sometimes, is that like take a beat, take a second, show up how you can in that moment, but like try and bring your body back to peace and equilibrium and then respond.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's so important to do that because, I mean, all I could think about in my mind is we have memes.
Yeah.
For what happens immediately inside our brains when certain things happen.
Yeah, it's like fire going off and like people running around.
Or I love a really good, like, swift head turn to the side of, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
I'm from the United States South, and every example I have ever had of how to handle a quick, unusual moment has been, let's refer to it as dramatic. Okay. So in those moments, I have to remove myself from first level instinct. So it's nice to know that, there are other people who feel that way too. Since this is the first episode of the podcast, I will try to, I don't know, ask our listeners, is this a space where you would like an opportunity to be able to share your thoughts on some of the things that we discuss? I'll make sure I chat with the people here at Pathways to see if we can give people an opportunity to do that. That could be pretty exciting.
That could be pretty cool. I love that.
All right. Well, continuing on, I have a question about once the moment has passed, when it's over, how do you feel like you usually recount what happens? Does it feel like you're watching a movie, or do you feel like you're suddenly back in the scene?
That's a good question. I think the way I process things is very externally, so by talking about it with people, because if I get into my head too long, I think I just kind of spiral and then it's not a good place for me to be. So I like to have kind of that back and forth conversation with either a friend or, like I mentioned before, my mom or maybe a therapist or something, just to kind of sort out how I feel about it. Did I react in a way that I feel good about? Is there like repair that needs to be done? And then I'm sorry, can you ask the second part of that question again?
Absolutely. When you're thinking about it later, does it feel like you're watching a movie or you're back in the scene? It's reoccurring.
No, I think it's been more like watching a movie. Like I'll replay it in my head like a movie. I don't feel like I'm physically back there.
Yes.
Yeah. What about you?
For me, I think the majority of the time I feel like I am back there. Like I am someone who, we use it again for better or worse. It's one of those things where when I'm in a moment, in an experience, even if it's a good one, I really am like stretching my eyeballs, my body, every part of me to collect data, to try to take in as much as I can in that moment, to be able to recollect it later, to be able to kind of check my own self within that moment when I'm thinking about it later. And I once took a photography class that was taught by Henry Fair, who is an environmental photographer, specifically J. Henry Fair. Let me make sure.
Yeah.
And if I say it right, then that means the listener can go and look them up on Instagram.
That's right.
Beautiful. And if you search J. Henry Fair, you will find it. Stunning photos.
Okay, J. Henry Fair. Go look him up on Instagram.
Indeed. And so we did this photography class, and he was explaining to us how our phone, when we take a picture, what it does is it kind of makes a guesstimation about the data that it took in that photo. And then it just kind of flects it all together and gives you kind of its best version. But you can go in there and request that it maintain all data in the picture. And it will keep every ounce of detail that it saw when you snap that picture, all of the light exposure, everything.
Yeah.
And if you're doing intense photo editing, you want this so you can, do what you need to do.
Yeah.
I feel like my eyeballs have always wanted to just capture all data so that later on, if I'm trying to think about what happened, and especially from a standpoint of did I handle that right?
Right.
I think about that a lot.
Yeah.
Then it's almost like I like being able to put myself back in my body and be like, no, wait a minute. There was a trash can right there. And there was a couch right there.
Yeah.
So I definitely didn't go to the bathroom over there. Whatever it's got to be. That's me. I'm always trying to be able to be accurate.
So are you like remembering smells and like things happening in the background and people walking by and that kind of thing and sounds?
Yes. I was just about to say down to whatever song was playing in the background.
Interesting. Does that take you away from like the like interaction that you're having, do you think? Like, does it distract you?
I think it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
I think it kind of is if it was a fun situation and I'm having a fun conversation, then no. It's like, if anything, I'm trying to invite them into the memory. I want to see if they can put their body beside me in the past.
Cool.
Wherever I was on a lawn, But if it's a not fun one, then it does have a potential to kind of bounce me out. And I'm stuck over there, and eventually someone has to say, dude, do you need a sandwich or something?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for telling me about that. I really appreciate that information.
Of course.
Now, when you tell someone else about an experience, how does it feel before and until someone understands what happened to you? And what about after they finally get it?
I think maybe when I start telling somebody about something, it really depends on the person that I'm talking to. So if there's somebody that has an animated face and they're just like there to listen to me and they're happy to be there and they're smiling along and they're nodding, that feels great. There are some people, though, who just are very stone-faced maybe, or they don't react until there's something to react specifically to. I think in the first scenario, I feel way more comfortable to share and I feel excited. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this person wants to listen to me. In the second scenario with like the stoic face, I'm not really sure if you're into what I'm talking about. I feel kind of alone maybe in the storytelling world. I'm kind of like, do you want to be here? Do you even want me to be talking to you? And when you're like looking at somebody and you can tell that their mind is elsewhere. I don't feel comfortable sharing in those scenarios. And I'm kind of just like, this doesn't make me feel heard or understood or like want to continue. It doesn't make me feel loved or cared for, But then when somebody does get it, like if the stoic-faced person is eventually like, oh yeah, I get that. I'm like, okay, we're on this journey now together and like we're back in it and I'm not alone just floating in this, universe of aloneness when I'm sharing my stuff. Right. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. It had two-way conversation. It is not just the words. It's also the body language and whether or not it feels receptive. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and I struggle with sharing about myself sometimes unless I really do feel like that person wants to hear. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to bore anybody, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think I'm working on it, but it is nice to feel heard, and I think everybody can say that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think for me, I kind of developed kind of this like 3-point space about me. Level 1, if I'm in a situation where I'm at least like able to process this way, because I'm acknowledging sometimes I'm stressed out and I don't think about level 1. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
But if I'm in a space where I can process level 1, I start with, excuse me, do you have a moment for me to talk to you about something?
Yeah.
I acknowledge it might be a little bit of a downer or stressful. And if now is not the time for something like that, I don't have to talk about it right now. I try to do that.
Yeah.
But level 2 is if I'm talking to someone and I feel like what I'm trying to express to them is important. If I notice that they're kind of zoning off, I ask myself, okay, am I telling this person on the level of I need them to hear me so I'll feel better? Because that's part of it. Because if I'm just telling them out of obligation, I can do that later.
Sure.
But if I'm telling them because I also want to be heard, I need to figure that out inside my own mind first. But past that, is this something that they really should be hearing me on? In the big scale of things, like mom, right? Our parents, oftentimes when we're talking to them about certain life things, if we don't tell them about it and it comes up later and they had never heard nothing about it, then we get an earful.
Yeah.
You
didn't tell me that.
I'm like, so you don't need your mom now? You don't need it? You don't need it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't. So fine, and we're conversating. But if I'm trying to have this conversation right now, and I know we could be having it now, but you're not really listening to me, but I know later on you're going to be upset. if it all comes up and, oh, you didn't tell me about this.
Well, why didn't I tell you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I tell myself in that moment, I'm going to ask as calmly as I can, excuse me, is now actually a good time?
Yeah.
That's me giving the other person an opportunity for honesty. If they tell me yes, I'm going to continue, but it's going to be with this thought in my mind. I told you, I asked you. And if I was able to process step one, that means I asked you twice. If you do not hear what I am telling you as I let the words come out of my mouth, I am fulfilling my obligation to tell you whether you heard me or not. And it's on you if you chose to not pay attention. That's entirely on you. Further yet and more, if you end up with a problem because you didn't hear me out and you could have been warned, perhaps next time you will realize, if I really can't do this right now, maybe I should just tell the truth.
Yeah.
And that's, again, on you. But I did what I did. Yeah. And I did what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
The third and last point of it is when I'm in that situation and I feel like maybe this person is hearing, maybe they're not, so on and so forth, the last step is, okay, I attempted telling you how this situation is going, how it's affecting me, what's going on with me, and I did need to be heard, but you're not really hearing me right now, and maybe you can't hear me right. So I'll let that go.
Yeah.
But I will ask myself, what kind of processor are you? Out of the time that I've known you, how do I usually see you take in information? Are you someone that, like, when you hear it, you immediately have an idea and you're, like, on it? Or are you someone that when you hear information, you're like, okay, I'll get back to you on that? If I know you're someone who usually needs time to process data, then I can acknowledge that perhaps I am telling you this and you are hearing it, but you are processing that data.
Yeah.
And I just need to be patient as you process the information and then give you time. You might not even be able to give me an answer today.
Totally.
It might take 2 to 5 business days before I get your advice on this situation.
Right. That's right.
And if that is what it is, then that's okay. I can just acknowledge your love language is data process.
Yeah.
And I need to give you that space.
Yeah. But that takes time sometimes getting to know people. So like it really depends like who you're talking to and what you're sharing with them. Because you're so right. Like I've definitely experienced people who it's like, I don't think you're listening to me at all. But then a few days later, it's like, I was thinking about that thing that you said to me. And I'm like, oh my God, you were listening the whole time. So you're so right. It does take time getting to know how people process things, how people listen, how people take in information. Yeah. And that it's a dance sometimes, I think, with people.
But we don't have to do that all the time.
No.
Friend, let me tell you, I once had a therapist. Well, she would ask me a question.
Yeah.
And I start answering her. And within 2.5 minutes, sister girl, eyeballs was in a different.
No, a therapist?
A therapist.
Oh,
and
no.
I went through it for about 3 weeks. But on the 4th week, I kid you not, this woman fell asleep.
Well, no.
I've been through some things. Ain't nothing I've gone through at all a pillow fluffer.
Oh, that's awful.
Like, I don't have to take this. I will take my dollars elsewhere.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Goodness gracious. But so you're right, it's a dance, but we don't have to dance every time. We do not.
That's a professional though. It's professional. They're like paid to listen to talk.
That's part of the reason for this podcast.
Wow. Okay.
To determine how to speak to those professionals.
Yeah.
And when it's not worth it for you to be trying to deal with someone who is not where you need them to be.
Right. Okay.
We're almost finished with our portion, and I'm very grateful for your time today.
Oh my gosh, I loved it.
Wonderful. Do you think having someone who listens has made an impact on how you feel when you remember things that have happened to you?
Yeah, I do, because like I was saying before, it really feels like there's a 2-person interaction happening. So whether it's good news and I'm sharing something good, it's like, okay, that's so fun to share that with somebody. Like I love being part of something. I love like this collective idea. Have you ever heard the term collective effervescence?
Oh, no. Please tell me more.
So you know that feeling you get when you're at a concert or a sports game or at something with a big group of people and you're all sharing in the same experience. So like live music, for example, or even just like watching something happen on the street, like a busker even. And you're like, oh, this is a really cool feeling. Like I feel this collective effervescence. So everyone's feeling it. They're all experiencing this thing together.
Yes.
And that's a really powerful feeling. And so I think when good things are happening, or even bad things, when you have someone going through it with you or in conversation with you or even next to you, it just creates this feeling of like connection, community, safety maybe. Maybe you look back on it differently than you would if you were experiencing it alone because there's somebody else to offer their point of view.
Yeah.
And that's cool too. And they'll remember it differently than you did too, which is often a cool way of like remembering the memory. Because, you know, when you're having a conversation with someone who was there with you and you're like, remember this thing that happened? And they were like, no, but remember this thing? And you're like, oh my gosh, forgot about that entirely. That's such a cool like addition to my memory.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
This is my last question for you, Maddie. Do you think you feel confident in how you express your side of the story when we're talking?
I do, yes. I think that has come with not being afraid to acknowledge if I've done something wrong and not being afraid to acknowledge that, yeah, maybe I didn't react the best in this situation, but here's how I'm going to fix it. And I think like moving forward in my life and just like growing up and learning the lessons of life, you kind of figure out that like you just have to show up as the best version of yourself. You just try and be the best person that you can be and act kindly and I think with genuine intention, and people can feel that, and then you in turn kind of feel better about your actions. You know, like you can look back and be like, okay, no, I think I did show up authentically in that situation.
I'm happy to hear. I really appreciate the way you put that, and I like the way you're approaching it, because I think what you said is when you're expressing your side of the story, it's usually with the awareness that whatever situation occurred, you were already operating from your best intention. And I kind of approach things very similarly. I realized I had a certain relationship with self-trust, that I was always editing my decision on I was always editing my choice whether or not something was a good decision based on how things would turn out at the end. But that is not fair, nor accurate, nor logical, because you did not know how things would turn out at the end when you made the decision at the beginning.
Totally. Yeah.
So all you can really do is make the decision that you're making at the time. But when I realized that, I decided to take it a step further. I have a fascination with the old Greek word for evolution, which is exelixy. And I asked myself, what did I think could be the best evolution I could make for myself? And I said that it would be deciding the answer to the question before I am ever asked the question. So in a situation of, did I do the right thing or the wrong thing? It doesn't matter what happened later. When the moment occurs, my question is, how will I approach this regardless of what happens next, whether it goes well for me or it doesn't, and no matter how it will affect the other person, or will it be good, bad, whatever, am I going to be able to live with myself in the situation?
Like showing up authentically.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I make the choice from the standpoint of, no matter what is going to happen next, can I stand by this choice any day and every day?
There you go.
And then I move forward. And at that point, there is no such thing as hindsight being 20/20. I had foggy glasses on when I made the choice. Sorry. You can tell me about hindsight later on.
Yeah.
But I did the best I could.
Yeah.
And I know that I did. And I won't be trying to decide, oh, I did that wrong because somebody else didn't feel good about it later. I know that when I made this choice, I was thinking about, okay, I'm respecting them, I'm respecting me, I'm respecting the rules. And this is as close as I can get to trying to be respectful of all those things.
Definitely.
Oh, I didn't know that you specifically don't like the color purple. So I my bad, but I did the best I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think we're on the same page about that. Like, yeah, just showing up authentically as who you are, and yeah, handling situations that you can look back and be like, no, I handled that the way that I would handle that now. I would handle it tomorrow. I would handle it the next day.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly the way I approach it.
Mm-hmm.
I am very grateful for the time you spent with me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And we'll be continuing forward in just a few.
Great.
Hello, my name is Jeanette Westover, and thank you for joining us in Cause and Effect, a mental health-focused podcast for Pathways Clubhouse. Again, my name is Jeanette. I am happy to be your host, and today on our show we will also have Maddie as well as Libby, people who are often at Pathways Clubhouse. Moving forward, I'd like to do a few acknowledgments. First, I would like to say, as I'm recording this, I am on the unceded land and territories of the Musqueam, Coast Salish, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. That means at some time in history, those people lived here and had a claim to this land, but through an unfair trade or complete forced seizure, this land was taken from them. Where you are listening may be the territories of those people or others. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge them and say my appreciation of these lands as well as their stewardship of it in the past. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. I'd also like to thank Pathways Clubhouse for the podcast, as well as the other programs and transformations they offer in the community, the technical and supportive staff that helped with creating the podcast, and my guests for their time and participation today. Finally, I'd like to thank you for giving me some of your time and for tuning in. I'm very grateful. In today's episode, which is called Whose Side Is It Anyway?, we're going to be talking about the ways that we process what we're going through and how we communicate with other people about those experiences. It's going to be important to me to speak with our guests about their experiences, as well as my own experiences and perspectives on these matters. And then, of course, I would like to eventually give other people an opportunity to perhaps give comments on what they think about these situations. Finally, I hope that after you listen to today's episode, you have more insight on how you would like to present information about the things that you have potentially gone through. It is my goal that we all be able to share our experiences in a way that gives us agency and accountability, as well as gives us opportunities to find the assistance we need with processing the experiences we go through. I'm very grateful to Maddie for giving us some of her time. I'd like to share a little bit more about why I was passionate about creating this episode. I'm someone who has recently immigrated to where I live, and this is something that I'm learning to cope with in my own ways. Part of this process is telling the things that have occurred in my life to new people, whether it be for medical purposes or just making friends. However, where I came from before, one of the things I was starting to worry about was feeling like I had gone through a volume of things that was too unusual for other people to be able to feel a sense of empathy about. I also felt like perhaps I was going through things that people just simply didn't believe. And I think many people go through experiences where they try to talk about what happened to them and they don't feel heard, or someone tells them that they don't believe their side of the story. That was one of the most painful things for me. I decided after a while to start closing up and stop talking about the things that were happening to me, but that isn't very helpful either, and that created its own kind of problems. Bottling it all up caused problems with my health, as well as problems with my social experiences with others. So time has been causing me to want to experiment with how I communicate with other people. Eventually, I figured out sometimes I want to vent. Sometimes I actually do need advice. And when are the moments when I'm really upset, and to be honest, I'm kind of stuck being upset. And if I'm being fair, maybe no amount of talking to me is actually going to make me not be upset anymore. as I started to realize all of those things are emotional states I'm going through, as well as other people, then I realized it's my responsibility to know when to share and who to share with. Now that I'm in a new place, I've been able to not only keep some of the friends from where I was before by changing how I approach when I talk to them about the things I'm going through, but also learning when I'm moving forward how to ask questions as I talk to people, how to let them know, hey, I would really like your advice on something, but do you have a moment? Or, excuse me, I need someone to talk to my day about, and I don't need advice, I just need to chat it out. Or if I really am having a bad day, and there's someone right there trying their best to calm me down, am I still really upset because the moment is beyond me? Or maybe I haven't expressed a part that really made me upset? Or am I just kind of stuck and maybe I should try to do something different to feel better? I think exploring that has been helping me a lot. Now I'm starting to realize that maybe what helps is having great friends who are able to take one of those, three things: a vent, a counsel, or a controlled moment where if they're trying to help me, I can calm down. But otherwise, that's what therapy is for. That's what counsel is for. But when I realized I was going to therapy and counseling and oftentimes still not getting what I needed, I realized I was feeling unheard in some of the most important spaces. And I realized I think I need to build a vocabulary to kind of bridge a sense of communication between me as someone going through these things and the expert who's sitting there listening to me, trying to offer me advice, medication, or any types of medical treatments that may assist me. I think this is something that I'm now referring to as the experience, someone who's going through it, myself, and the expert, someone who has gone and received education or training to assist someone who is inexperienced. But to be fair, I am acknowledging that perhaps they've never gone through those types of experiences, and it may be hard to describe to someone else what it's like to sit in my seat or live in my shoes. Have you ever tried to explain to someone what it feels like to ride a bike? I mean, you can tell them functionally how to do it, but you may not be able to describe exactly how it feels to be in that seat pedaling the pedals. So the goal is to begin having these conversations to build the language that we need. That way we'll be able to talk about how the things we went through are affecting us in a way to where people who maybe have never gone through those things can understand us and give us the assistance that we need. Now we're going to have a little time to speak with Libby. Libby is often here at Pathways, but usually quite busy. But if you're ever looking for them, sometimes you can find them on the 4th floor. Libby, is it all right if I chat with you a little bit about some thoughts on today's episode?
Yes, thanks for having me.
It is my absolute pleasure. Can you tell me a little bit more about your education and your expertise inside this subject?
Yeah, so last year, actually, I completed a 2-year master's program in narrative therapy and community work through the Dulwich Center at the University of Melbourne. I was doing it all online and remote. And yeah, narrative therapy is a value-based approach that understands people separate from their problems. It really focuses on how different societal discourses and the environment in which we grow up in affects our mental health. Yeah, it's really shaped how I think about mental health and identity and community. Alongside my schooling right now, I work here as a program staff at Pathways, which is great, and it allows me to bring narrative ideas into real, everyday conversations.
That sounds wonderful. And it's really exciting to hear that this approach is being welcomed and explored inside of professional spheres. It's a very important component that is a part of what makes up the experiences that we end up having. Now, at this time, do you have anyone in your life that you feel listens to you when you need to be heard?
Yeah, for sure. I think in professional spaces, I really rely on my coworkers. We take care of each other, and that mutual care matters, especially in mental health work. Outside of work, my friends, my therapist, my chosen community play a huge role. I think being listened to by people with shared lived experience can really, really help dissolve some intrusive thoughts and reminds me that we're all just trying our best. I think there's something really powerful about being heard by people who get it without needing a lot of explanation. That shared understanding can be incredibly affirming and regulating for my nervous system. I also want to say that even though talking things through with trusted support systems is so helpful, honestly, the place I feel the most heard is when I'm alone in nature, if I'm being honest. I think being in the mountains or a forest gives me a sense of spaciousness. It makes me feel like I can exist without performing or explaining myself. I feel like the forest doesn't interrupt or judge, and that kind of unconditional listening has taught me a lot about who I am when no one is asking me to be anything else.
I love that. That's beautiful. It's kind of like, and of course, we all have different ways that we process our experiences, that we process our memories, our emotions. And I love that you brought up that for some people, the way that they process may not necessarily always be a conversation with another. For some people, they need time to have silence. And for me personally, it's actually kind of one of my secrets. I know lots of people like to label themselves extrovert or introvert or what have you. Oftentimes, I prefer to avoid sharing specifically my orientation on that scale because I think, and this is entirely fair, and I like that people do it. When people learn that you are extroverted or introverted, if they are attempting to be accommodating and considerate, if they are choosing to be considerate, often they alter their approach with how they communicate with you and how they interact with you based on what you said is your preferred form of social style.
Totally.
Whereas for me, despite my known preferred form of social style, my preference overall when it comes to social interaction is authenticity. I would rather observe how someone wants to express themselves regardless. And if I'm having a day where I feel I cannot really reach an extroversion point, I feel like that becomes my own personal responsibility to remove myself in case I know I have, let's say, a very vivacious friend and they like being outgoing. You know, I in my mind, I would rather they not even know that I'm actually an extroverted introvert, very much an introvert.
And the two can coexist at the same time. Absolutely.
I grew up in a room that was actually completely silent. My room actually was soundproofed because it was a part of a studio. So I grew up where the sounds of the ticking of a clock could be loud. I am used to destimulating to either complete silence or levels of brown ambient noise, not because the brown noise is special, but because the world is actually noisy. It's rarely ever actually silent. You have to go somewhere silent. And even if you're outside when it's quiet, there is still just some hum. And so for me, I usually don't tell people, but as I'm going through the day, I actually feel like I'm collecting data all day. And then eventually I need a moment to be in quiet on my own for all of that to kind of simmer and process down before I can even begin to relax. That is not the part of relaxation. I need that pre-relaxation. And so I love that you shared that with us, that for you, sometimes it's that you need a moment in nature instead. And I'm really glad that the listeners will be able to, you know, some people are going to be like, hey, that's not my problem, hashtag can't relate. But For those of our listeners who are similar in that way to you or to me, to where I can get along, but after a while, I need some quiet time. I'm glad they will be able to hear that resonance amongst us. Yeah. Yes. Now, within that, the resources, the people, and I would like to go so far as to say your known coping spaces. Within that, how do you feel that has affected your ability to recollect, remember, share, and affirm your story when you're talking to other people?
And I love this question. This is a very kind of narrative therapy, narrative practice-based question, which is right up my alley.
I love it.
Yeah, but I think being listened to has really shaped how safely I can remember my own story. I think narrative practice understands that people already have knowledge about their lives, and being heard helps that knowledge surface and gives language to experiences that might feel super confusing. When someone listens with curiosity and respect, it becomes easier to notice my skills and my resilience and the values that might have otherwise stayed hidden. And I think, having that safe space can change memory. When I know I won't be judged or reduced to a label, I think we can reflect a lot more honestly and a lot more gently.
I love that. Your expression right there, I think it caused me to realize perhaps going forward, and of course within this podcast I do kind of say at the beginning that this is not just a matter of talking back and forth with different people and just hearing. The goal of this is that I'm wanting to learn from these conversations how I can navigate the forward portions of my life as a survivor of certain experiences, and one who truly does want to avoid difficulties going forward, but having awareness that that is a part of what it means to be alive. So with that in mind, I think what you just said has caused me to really think about how having safe places to be able to share your story without being gaslit or undermined or manipulated becomes so vital, especially in the early stages when things have just occurred. I'm thinking about how many times I did not have the right person to be able to talk to. And when I spoke with that person, they would either say things that would dampen, soften, or slightly alter the truth of the severity of a situation, or they would try to do things to make me second guess my own valid emotions or even my own true recollection of what had occurred, until the next thing I know, I'm feeling not only hurt, but additionally confused, not just by their conversation, but by a sense of lack of self-trust that this person has now given me on top of already having experienced something negative. Whereas in later portions of life, when I finally got access to decent counselors and so on and so forth, and you begin sorting through some of these old experiences, you then realize, wait a minute, at that time, didn't such and such and such and such happen? Now, how did I forget that happened? But you'll remember that one person that you told first who said, but maybe you shouldn't have even been there that day. That person,
Totally. The judgment can be dangerous.
Yes.
That's why, you need a really safe space. That is so important.
And you end up carrying it with you. It ends up becoming a part of the story in your own brain. And it never even occurred that way. But because that person you spoke to, because they were not actually a safe person to speak to, they've poisoned the memory. And then as you recollect, you're still remembering that added poison. So interesting to think about. Thank you for that.
And so easy to internalize that judgment, right? When you don't feel safe. And absolutely. No, totally.
When it's important, or shall I say, when is it important that we know our own stories well with awareness And what happens when we start to lose that, when we start to get to a point to where we've lost either some of the details or the emotions around those things? To explain that a little bit more, if it helps, I imagine that might seem a bit ambiguous. Where I'm going with that is, at what stages does it become important to maintain your awareness of your experience, even if it is uncomfortable, even if it makes you feel bad to remember it? And when is it better to begin to start letting things go, but with the knowing that you don't want to become desensitized or numb to toxic or dysfunctional behaviors? I think that's a better way of me trying to express that question.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. I think awareness can be really helpful because it gives us context. When we don't understand how our experiences or environments or society has shaped us, sometimes distress can start to feel really isolating, or like you said earlier, we internalize it. I think knowing our own story isn't about having everything figured out. It's about having enough awareness to be compassionate with ourselves. I think when people feel pressure to understand themselves perfectly, I think it can actually increase the stress. And I really love narrative practice because it invites curiosity instead of urgency.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I want to know that your story is allowed to unfold slowly and in layers and at any age.
Yes, I love that. That is something I share very often. In fact, right now I have a profile somewhere where it says, it asks me, the prompt question was, if you could go back and tell your younger self something, what would you say? And my response was, I would tell myself that I don't need to know the answer to every question, regardless of how much pressure the world is putting on me to answer things as fast as they want their response. Mm-hmm. Number one, in fact, I got 3 for this. Number one, unless you paying my bill or providing me utility, you ain't gonna make me rush with my answer. Get out of my face. The restoration of respect to human beings being treated as human beings will only happen when human beings begin to demand to be treated with respect again.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that means, I know that we have an entire culture around, oh, don't ask for an authority figure inside that place to ask for help because that makes you look like a bad person. Ask for help. And if that authority figure mistreats you, baby, your money is the whole point. Take it somewhere else. Don't let disrespect pile up inside yourself, because it then brews a sense of resentment that comes out on others. That's the first thing. As that was the first thing that I started to realize. I at least need to respect myself in that portion. If I am in a space where it is professional or it's financial and they are rushing me, if I push myself to say something I'm not ready to say, the person who will be responsible for that resentment is not them, it's me. That brings me to my second point. Someone else wanting an answer out of me very fast, my job is not their comfort. If it is not a situation that is dire, that is an emergency, and that is a detriment to their health or their well-being, they can wait. And I am not their mama. I'm not here to teach them how to be patient.
So true.
If they cannot agree to my right to my time to process information, then they need to reevaluate their relationship with me. And I'm saying that as a person who used to struggle as the antagonist in that. I used to have to think so quickly about things that I expected other people to match my pace. And when they didn't have an answer fast enough for me, I often felt uncomfortable, if not disrespected. But not because it was about them, it was about me. I felt uncomfortable because I didn't have an answer to what I felt was my need. And I wanted them to give me the answer to soothe my anxiety. But that's not my job. Or rather, it wasn't their job. And in this moment, I understand when other people are doing that to me, It is not my job to soothe your anxiety about your uncertainty. I deserve my time to think. And then the last thing, the third point, that is what life is for. Why else are we here but to explore and make a decision about how we feel when we experience things? If we are rushing through that, we are rushing through the most fundamental point of being a human, that you see, feel, and experience things in your own way, and it will always be different from the person who is beside you, even if they were born in the exact same conditions as you and look precisely as you do. It will always be different, and that is the one unifying factor. If you are rushing through your right to decide,
Absolutely,
then you are not enjoying the process of getting to know yourself. So I love that that's what you share. I apologize if I kind of ranted on that.
No,
my
that's
favorite things to talk
beautiful.
about.
And I love how like you keep saying the word rush, because to me, rush, like, that is such a societal thing that it pushes on us, because we don't need to be rushing. Where did this concept of rush come from? Like, totally these societal discourses, right, that tell us that we need to be going at a certain pace or hitting these certain checkpoints at a like certain time, and we all just need to slow down.
Yes.
So important.
Thank you so much for that. I have an additional question here. What do you recommend for being able to share our history safely with different kinds of people? And what about when it comes to being heard from a professional?
Yeah, I think professional support can offer structure and confidentiality and skills. Super, super important. But I also think that healing doesn't only happen in clinical settings. I think being heard by peers or community members can create a sense of belonging that's also deeply restorative. I also want to note that sharing our story safely comes from choice. Not everyone needs access to your whole story.
Yes.
Narrative practice really emphasizes that people are experts in their own lives, which includes deciding when, how, and with whom you share that story. And I think that's really important to remind ourselves.
That's a very good point. That's so well said, because in a way, the story of what you have experienced is kind of like giving someone a roadmap to your vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And in my opinion, you need to have one of two ways to approach that. If you're going to give someone a roadmap to your vulnerabilities, either you need to make sure that's a person you can trust with those vulnerabilities, or you need to make sure you are someone who is so comfortable with your vulnerabilities that if someone chooses to come at you, you can live with ultimate authenticity. And thus your vulnerability is not your weakness. It is a very apparent stated fact. And if someone wishes to come and kick against a brick wall that is standing there as a fact, well, they're the one who's hurting their foot. They didn't accomplish anything. If you are ready to share your vulnerabilities open in that manner, also be ready to understand that some people may attack you in those vulnerabilities, but you were bold enough, wild enough, strong enough to stand there with your scar out in the first place. So that means they aren't going to kill you by hurting your scar. You made it already through the situation. They might be picking at the wound, but they won't take you out. So don't overreact, in other words.
And sharing vulnerability is a very big act of bravery.
Yes.
Which people also need to remember. It's super brave.
Yes. And I think it's one of the hardest parts because it's brave, when we choose to share a vulnerability, if someone chooses to harm us in return, that is often the time when we have a fully painful emotional response, whether it's outside of our usual character. And that is why I wanted to kind of make that distinction of remembering that person pressing at your vulnerability is not you going through the negative experience again. It is them picking at your wound, but it is not going to hurt you the way the first time did. So try to regulate your response. Try not to react in a way of fight or flight if you can. Try to remember, wait a minute, it was my choice, like you said, my choice to share my story as a survivor. Their choice to hurt what I went through does not have to be an additional pain of me taking a new wound. I know I chose to share.
Yeah. And if
It
they
becomes empowering.
Totally. And if they react negatively, I think it speaks more to their state of mind, right, as well. And that's why it's so important that we do try to find those trusted people that we can talk to. Absolutely.
Yes. I also began to learn that I have a certain level of responsibility when it comes to how and when I'm sharing as well, though, because being considerate and accountable of other people also means acknowledging when what you have to share may or may not be something that person should hear at this time.
Yep, absolutely.
If you may destabilize them or make them feel uncomfortable, that's responsible sharing. You need to be careful in that way. And I had to learn that even in great friendship, your friends are not here for you to just bring your most horrible experiences to and say, you're my friend, you should be able to hear me out on that one.
Yep.
They have emotions as well.
Totally.
You have to share with responsibility to that other person's emotions too.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, that was just something I think about pretty often.
Absolutely. And I think we can always maybe approach situations like if we're worried about burning friends out, we can always just ask and say, hey, do you have capacity today to hear what I'm going through? If you don't, not a problem. Like, I think that consent of asking if they have capacity to listen is really important as well.
I completely agree. And I love that in the podcast, when the listeners are going through it, you will hear Maddie echoes a similar sentiment. We talk about it in a portion with Maddie.
Heck yeah, Maddie.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, Maddie.
That's a part of it. You can ask questions. You can ask, is now a good time? Or would it be better if it was later? Can we have this conversation right?
Absolutely. And sometimes your friend might not have capacity to hear that day. Maybe they're going through their own stuff, and that's okay. And it's so hard to not take that personally. But I think it's really important to remember, again, we all have feelings and emotions and are going through stuff. So just because it's not the right time for them to listen doesn't mean they don't care or interested, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I completely agree. I am very grateful for so much time you've given so far. I have one more question. Do you have any recommendations on someone working on building their own self-narrative, but trying to make sure they approach it with as much clarity as possible and accountability? And when I say accountability, I want to be entirely transparent and fair. Every person is on their own journey with the cause and effects of the things that have occurred. And we all have sort of our reactionary assessment of whether or not we approached the way we handled something a certain way in the right way. But I think that number one piece that's often missing out of the conversation is comfort and care is necessary to address a wound. And even if you are assessed and patched up, the emotional component of comfort and care, when it does not get addressed, it is still there. And we as a society are still learning more about what it looks like to neglect comfort and care on the emotional level, but we do at least understand that there are lasting effects. Where I'm going with that is acknowledging that comfort and care is necessary, and with hopes of eventually getting into an episode where we talk about how that could be missing out of our process. Once someone has had the level of compassion necessary to be able to hopefully not still feel what has occurred to them is personal, because that's important. We can't tell people to don't take it personal if we haven't given them an opportunity to feel comforted, to feel heard, to feel seen. No compassion. Of course, they're going to feel it personally because it happened to them personally.
Of course.
But if you can at least offer them a sense of comfort first, then their pain can stop clouding their judgment, and they'll be able to see the components that maybe it wasn't about them, and they could see the other portions.
Totally.
When they do that, that's usually the first time someone can actually see what they may or may not have done to potentially add to a situation. Maybe they did nothing at all, and it wasn't their fault altogether. And that needs to be addressed too. because your pain could be in the way of that as well. But regardless of whether or not a portion of it in an insurance way, we 50% at fault, that part doesn't matter. Regardless of that, when we're talking about these things, if we can get to a healed space, we want to be able to have a conversation that speaks about all parts. This is what I did, whether I'm happy or unhappy about that. This is what they did, whether I'm happy or unhappy about that. And I want to understand how to process that inside my emotions from a level and balance perspective, not from a, I want to see myself as the better or the bias, but from a standpoint of just being fair. What is your recommendation for that approach?
Yeah, I think just going back to what you were saying about kind of building one's own self-narrative with clarity, that's also very narrative therapy coded. Because, when we talk about building self-narrative, narrative practice makes an important distinction between something we call dominant stories and preferred stories. Our dominant story is often shaped by trauma or struggle or societal pressures. It tends to highlight what's wrong or missing. And over time, those stories can become really loud. I would say most of us are living with a dominant story about ourselves, even if we don't realize it. Mm-hmm. But what I love about narrative practice as well is because it invites us to kind of slow down and ask, is this the whole story? And then preferred stories are quieter. They're deeply connected to values. They show up in moments of care and courage, boundary setting, or survival even. And to unlock a preferred storyline, I often suggest that people start by identifying what they value, like kindness, independence, creativity, connection, and then look for moments where those values were present, even if it was in a really small way. This work should be slow and it should be compassionate. There's no deadline for understanding yourself. I think clarity comes from paying attention to those moments, and accountability comes from choosing to honor what those moments say about what matters to you, again, without rushing or judging yourself.
I think that's beautiful. I love that you talked about the dominant narrative, and
which is kind of the story that society wants us to feel about ourselves, even though there's totally this preferred, sometimes we call it alternative storyline beneath that really, again, highlights our values and what's important to us. And sometimes we don't even realize what that preferred story is. It takes a lot of work to, again, do some self-reflecting and think what's important for us, or to reflect back on moments, where we were resilient or strong, and reminding ourselves, oh my God, we have so much other skills that, we're not even aware of.
Yes, I love it, because from my perspective, what I'm hearing is that dominant storyline is kind of, it's almost the time of your life when you are being pulled by the circumstantial external forces.
Absolutely.
Where your choices are being driven by the things that are happening to you and around you, and not by what is important to you and what matters to you.
Totally. And it's so easy to internalize those pressures. Absolutely. And that's why we kind of want to do the reverse. And now we really want to focus on, okay, let's externalize this anxiety. Sure, anxiety exists, but I am not my anxiety. Like, the problem is the problem. The person isn't the problem, which is something that we talk a lot about as well. And so we really want to start to externalize these things and these pressures that really affect our mental health, and start to look kind of deeper on those alternative stories.
Yes. I feel like when I'm hearing you and I'm thinking about that process that's slow, where you're looking for yourself to create that preferred timeline narrative, where you're moving forward based on your values and what's important to you, I think I would like to give to our listener a possible step into how they can begin that. My life is a long story. But once upon a time, I put a book out. But in it, what I talked about was how to recenter your internal compass. And what I recommended was that someone find a quiet space where they are away from other people, so they can choose to do this mindfully. And then I specifically said, to choose to disassociate. Let me explain. Not disassociate in a negative mental health bad way, but to momentarily disassociate your emotions and thoughts from your circumstances. Try to find what you are feeling right now, and if it's based on a certain thing, can you temporarily stop feeling about that for now? Suspend it for a while. You know what the first thing most people are going to figure out about themselves if they do that? They hungry. They hungry. And if it ain't that they hungry, they need some water. But in the book, I tell the people to get some food and some water too. I tell them to do that part. And then after
my gosh, water is so important.
Right?
Go drink 3 glasses of water.
You heard it here. You heard it here. Your folks.
So oh my gosh, I don't drink enough water.
But then this is how I recommended to people to do it. You don't have to decide what person you've been up to today. That information is for mapping from this point forward. That is just to understand points, and that's it. Now, but from where you are today, ask yourself, based on who I believe I am, who I want to be, the situation I am encountering, what would that person do to resolve it? Ask yourself that question. Make the choice, but don't get moving yet. You're just thinking about it. Then once you think about what that version of you who was being your ultimate you would do, ask yourself, is that something I can actually do? Or what is the closest thing I can do to that is still harmonious and peaceful and respects how I actually feel right now? And then the most important question is, am I going to do that? And if I'm not going to, why not? If the answer is a valid reason, then that means who you are, who you thought you are at the beginning when you said, this is who I think I am. You just learned, that's not actually who I am. My value system has changed. I need to navigate differently. But if it is who you are and you say, this is what I'm going to do, move forward from this space knowing this is point one. Every other point before that is just like dots on the map. But this is point one. Move forward from that decision. And by the time you get to the end of the results of that decision, those consequences, you will be able to stand there and look back and say, I am here because I chose to do this based on who I believe I am at this time and the most harmonious effort I could make. That means I did nothing wrong. I do not begin to diminish my sense of self-trust because I made that choice from the best possible vantage I could.
And I like what you said, like at this time, because I think, again, we have this pressure to, we got to figure it all out now, or we got to work on ourselves and wanting to, again, to rush that process. But you're going to be a completely different person in 10 years, in 5 years, in 2 years, tomorrow. You could wake up and your beliefs and values can change, and that's okay.
Right. And when you talk about that slow process of being able to...
Slow and gentle, yeah.
Yes. If someone has never marked any points on purpose, they don't know. They're just sifting through their emotions of their memories. So they're sifting through, I know I did that, but I feel judgment about myself. I know I did that, but I was angry right there. But if you can't find a point yet, use that centering method to make your first, and just do that for a time until you have enough points you've created to build an assessment of who you are. And then you can begin the gentle approach that you were talking about.
Totally, I love that.
Like a bridge, yeah?
Yes, and please drink water.
Yes, please drink water.
Please drink water.
Thank you so much for your time. I am very grateful. Everyone, this has been Libby.
All of your reflections as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful for everything you've learned and been able to share with us today.
Thank you. I'm going to go drink some water.
Yay! I'm very grateful that you took some time to listen to me and the guests on the show today. I think we've learned a lot about how our ability to remember what happened to us can be affected not only by the conversations we're having with other people, but even our ability to process information and the spaces that we like to go to when it's time for us to think. It was so powerful and impactful to learn that some of the most simple things, like knowing who to go to and asking questions, like whether now is a good time to talk, can make a large difference in the way our interactions with other people can go. I'm glad we were able to discuss some ways to bring senses of self-agency and self-respect back to our stories as we go forward. And I'm very happy that we're beginning to have that conversation of sorting through our emotions about what happened and trying to find the space of where we fit inside the narration of it. My goal going forward is that maybe we can come up with new strategies or at least new paths of thinking to where, even though we know we can't completely avoid negative experiences, we can at least endure the experience as it's occurring with the knowledge that when it is over, we will not be damaged beyond repair, nor without the tools necessary to heal again. I hope what you take with you today is a new way of observing the things you've gone through. And maybe you can look at the past and say, today is step one, day one of getting in the front. I no longer want to be pulled by the external forces that carve the path that I am taking. I want to center myself and decide who I am, who I've become, at least for today, and make that choice for now, and then be open to continuing to ask myself that question, and maybe being able to love myself every time I get an answer. That might not happen the first time, but it can be a pretty good goal going long term. And that's what life is for, right? That's what we're here for, to learn how to exist. This has been Jeanette Westover, and I am very glad to have had a chance to speak with you. I look forward to our next episode of Cause and Effect. Be well. Here at Pathways, we hope you have enjoyed this episode of the podcast. If you would like to learn more about Pathways Clubhouse, feel free to look us up online. We have fantastic presence both on our website as well as our Instagram account. Also, remember, even though this podcast episode is only about an hour long, there is just a little bit more. If you would like to hear the entirety of it, we are working on a website specifically where you can come and listen to the whole podcast with all of those extra words. Coming soon.